Hello, my name's Tony Fretwell. I'm the National Player Development Manager for the Rugby Football League. What I hope to do during the course of this presentation is to explain the rationale, the background and the reason why we have the Embed the Pathway project. What we have here is a graphic that was produced by Sport England as part of the Youth Review of 2014. And what it does is it tells us about the environment and the landscape of young people's sport. What we have here is a representation that for more time in a given week than most people spend at work, young people spend that time on electronic devices, mobile phones, tablets, PCs, gaming consoles. When we look over here, we see that there's a much smaller amount taken for sport that includes PE. And the last time that review was done, that was more than twice as big as it is now. What this tells us is that young people's sport is under threat from technological advances and other activities far more than it's ever been before. Furthermore, the Youth Sport Trust Unlocking Potential document told us that only 21% of boys meet minimum activity recommendations. That's 16% for girls. And particularly team sports are struggling. You'll see here that the three major team sports nationally have a reduction in registered club participants, and our figures are very similar. Where there is growth happening is in the non-structured participation events such as Tough Mudder, Sky Ride, things whereby young people just turn up and play. And that poses a very strong question as to what offers we provide at 12s to 16s and whether that needs to change to meet that need. When we look further into the study, it gives us some information as to what are the key reasons for negative experience and for dropout. So a bad school experience, not doing sport they like, that's very much part of the reason why schools very often now offer far more activities but for shorter periods of time. Being told they're no good at sport is a key one, this one here. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to be a verbal action. If you imagine times when young people are put onto a line and the best two players stand there and the captains select teams, invariably it's the same 4 or 5 each time that are picked last. They're being told that they're no good at sport. Additionally, when you've got a young person who plays in a team sport who spends most of the time stood on the sidelines and gets that last 5 or 10 minutes provided the results beyond doubt, they're being told they're no good at sport. So it doesn't have to be a verbal action, it can be non-verbal. Young people have also told us that sport outside school is too structured, competitive and serious. There is an overwhelming majority of young people who don't care massively for the leagues. They don't care massively for results. Sure, on the day they want to win, but that isn't the be-all and end-all reason why they're there. Most of them are there for the enjoyment and the social interaction with their friends. And very often, in all community sport, touchlines can be quite torrid places. Many of us can envisage times when we've been stood at youth games and parents and coaches' behaviours have not been conducive to the young people's environment. Perhaps the family are not interested, maybe they lack resources or apply pressure to succeed in other areas. There's no doubt that young people are under more pressure through education than they have ever been before. League tables, pressure to succeed with English Baccalaureate has created an environment whereby that pressure is as high as it's ever been, and it's very commonplace for schools to offer compulsory English and maths after school. That's after school when traditionally sport would take place, but now that isn't always the case. There's a fear about being laughed at or disappointing others, and is very much linked to being told that they're no good at sport. And then last one, sport means getting red and sweaty, very much a key theme in the This Girl Can campaign by Sport England. Young people are surrounded by images on Facebook, on Twitter, in magazines, and those images are of celebrities and high-profile people who look their best. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that we shouldn't be providing rigorous sessions, we shouldn't be trying to get young people sweaty, but we need to be aware of the importance of self-image. What I'd like to do now is to put into context exactly what Embed the Pathway is and why we're doing it. What we have here in the first column is roughly the average number of annual births in England. That currently stands at around 880,000. Now, in utopia, in a perfect world, and every child played rugby league, that would be the talent pool in every single year group. The reality is very different. On average, we have 2,500 registered players in each age group. But that still isn't the talent pool. Of that 2,500 players, only around 1,700 to 1,800 are active. We've somehow lost between 500 and 700 players who are registered down at the club but are not active. And that's a critical component when we look at solutions to the problems. From this small talent pool, we have to furnish the community game, the semi-professional game, the Super League, and to provide an England team worthy of winning the World Cup. It's an enormous challenge given the size of the talent pool, especially when you consider we have around 8,000 or 9,000 registered community players between the ages of 12 to 16 in England. In Australia, our biggest competitor for the World Cup, there are 42,000 in Sydney alone. When you compare those figures, it does show that we're doing very well on an international stage, but there's always more we can do. The result is we create this scenario whereby when scholarships kick in at the end of under-14s, it is very much like Black Friday, whereby professional clubs clamour for the perceived best talents, and it becomes a mess where parents, coaches and particularly young people are disorientated and don't know where to turn. The player development policy aims to change that. Additionally, some clubs have absolutely no choice but to reach out and find talent from other areas, because in some cases their talent pools in a given age group can be less than 20 within their locality. So the solution? Well, if I was speaking from the headquarters of any of the governing bodies, they'd all be looking at growth. But growth has to be strategic and has to be targeted. There's lots of evidence of governing bodies delivering to thousands of schools nationally, hundreds of thousands of young people, but that doesn't necessarily translate into long-term participation. What is much more significant is strategic, focused, targeted growth. So for instance, we've got examples of professional clubs that have said that their programme will fit in with the need of the local game. One club in particular has a project aiming to get 175 players in each age group across the town. So they would look at their community clubs in a given age group, and if they saw that there were 16 registered players in the team, that team's under threat. A couple of players injured or not available for whatever reason, and their game could be postponed. So they would base schools activity at that club for that age group with the sole aim of recruiting an additional 9 players to be registered. That protects the fixtures with that club and means that they're not at threat of folding and ceasing to play. That type of targeted growth is particularly strong. Additionally, retention is growth, and as part of block 2 and 3 of Embed the Pathway for year 2 coaches, we've incorporated the Train to Retain project. Primarily because we are losing around 500 to 700 players annually who have registered, so they've shown interest by going down to the club, and we have to be very clear that it is an absolute priority to retain those players so that we don't lose them from the game. All of this goes to widen that talent base. There needs to be a focus from talent identification towards talent development. Talent identification suggests that we go out and we pick the very finest perceived talents from a particular playing pool and deliver additional coaching to them to make them better. But the reality is, when a talent pool is very small, that can be very difficult. Talent development enables you to develop all the players within a talent pool, because the question of what is talent is very difficult to answer. Talent isn't linear, talent is messy. Late developers can show very little potential early on and then progress to the highest levels in any sport, and it's very difficult to predict. We need to know the whole picture about player background, player potential, where they've been coached, what they need, and that holistic approach doesn't work with selective environments. Furthermore, evolved from a trial culture that due to relative age effect is proven to be flawed. Relative age effect is whereby we break the calendar year into 4 quartiles of 3 months. What this means is that within a year, a player can be 364 days younger than another player in the same age group. When we break this down statistically, we have found that in selected environments, such as scholarship, over 60% of the players selected are quartile 1. So that poses the question, is that where the most talented players are, or are we mistaking maturation for talent and picking the big dominant kids? Only 8% are quartile 4, the very youngest. However, when we get to Super League, we find that that breaks down into 25% segments roughly for each quartile. So you could suggest that most of those small younger players who make it through to scholarship go on to Super League because they're resilient, because they're tough, and they've always had to play catch up because they're always the youngest within that year group. There's no doubt that further work needs to go into how we counteract the effects of relative age effect within our community game. Talent transfer, a huge area for success for some sports in London 2012, whereby we looked at the attributes of a particular sport, found those in young people and worked with them to transfer those attributes within a sporting environment. The reality is that many of the next generation of England players may currently play basketball or football or rugby union, or maybe not even any structured sport at all. So what is a key aspect is how can we enable the opportunity for those talented athletes to give rugby league a try and then transfer onto a pathway. All of this will help to reduce those that slip the net, widen the talent pool, and make that third column that bit bigger to enable us to produce a World Cup winning England side. When we look at the research into what has gone in to prepare Embed the Pathway, here is a diagram that represents the current resources and work that's done within talent identification systems. And the large beige section here is the anthropometric work. In layman's terms, that's the balls, the bibs, the cones and the tackle shields. And we spend around 80% of our time doing that. We do very little psychomotor skills and very little psychological skills. But the research shows us we need to spend probably 80% of our time on motor skills and on psychology and far less of the anthropometrics. How we balance that out and make that invigorating and enjoyment is the real challenge, and that's what Embed the Pathway goes to set about doing. So what is Embed the Pathway? Well, it's essentially a national curriculum of rugby league for 12s to 14s, and it comes in 24 sessions which are in 3 blocks of 8. Each block is written, has a resource that's provided for those coaches, and there is a CPD session that supports it and introduces it. At the end of each block, players, usually in half terms and Easter breaks, will go to their local professional club where there will be a development day. Development days are not selected. You cannot be chosen to go. You're made aware of it, and if you would like to go, you go. And you can go to as many development days at as many different clubs as you can. The aim is that you receive high quality coaching and you're assessed and profiled according to your progress within that day. That profiling takes place on a bespoke profiling wheel, and every coach that engages on Embed the Pathway receives access to this bespoke program. It's very easy, it's very simple, it's very self-explanatory, and it provides a method for coaches and players to assess progress of themselves and compare that over time. We're using a dissemination and cascade model to roll out Embed the Pathway. So we have a central spine of 4 CPDs. We deliver to some community coaches, but primarily we deliver to delivery partners. These are red circles who then deliver within their locality, work with community coaches to upskill them, to give them the resources they need to coach better and to coach in a better way. Additionally, there's an accreditation scheme on the project. A player development partner is a professional club who can work with a college to deliver the Embed the Pathway CPD program in their locality. So we currently have 16 professional clubs that are delivering a program of Embed the Pathway within their area. We work to upskill them to enable them to do that. But if any coach completes all 3 blocks of our program or the program being delivered by a player development partner, they become, provided they're a level 2 coach, an England player development coach. By definition, the environment that they deliver that program in is a player development club. And it's a very simple way of recognising good practice in what is being delivered and how it's being delivered. Additionally, through the Skytry initiative, there is Embed the Pathway for Schools. Runs in exactly the same way with a 2-hour CPD for teachers. And if they use the Embed the Pathway Skytry tools to deliver within curriculum or extracurricular, they can be recognised as a player development school. The ethos is very simple, that every teacher and every coach with every team in the country working with players in the 12s to 16s bracket is effectively an assistant coach of the England head coach. They are working towards producing a better quality of player that progresses along the pathway and ultimately creates an England team that can win the World Cup. Through this, we're aiming to build a coaching network. We have some plans that will come into line with the new RFL website that's due for launch soon. There will be an online forum for coaches. They'll be sharing ideas on there. We have an Embed the Pathway YouTube channel where indeed you might be watching this video right now. We have a very vibrant Twitter feed where we get coaches who share written papers, photographs, videos, session plans, just simple comments, and it's a real community network of coaches talking about good practice. The aim is we want to build a coaching network, and that's very much started to emerge from the first 18 months of Embed the Pathway. We have our emails, we have a website, embedthepathway.co.uk, the Twitter feed, as I've said, and my email and the email of Anthony Atherton, my assistant manager on this project. And we aim to communicate and connect with as many people who want to ask questions about the Embed the Pathway programme. If that's you and you want more information, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can go to the website and get the contact details there as well. Look forward to speaking to you. Bye-bye.